And it's a typo. Like a typo. Literally. Because
Are you? Lucinda, do we have a form? I'm just looking at it. Doesn't look like we do. We have somebody from the city of County. We need another. No, we don't need.
Oh, well, that is here.
Yeah, it's back here. So we have a form.
Yeah.
Okay.
Kristen, can you hear us? Stephanie, can you hear us?
Yes.
Thank you.
It is 4 o'clock, so I'm going to ask that to join us. You do have a form, I think, Lucinda, so we're good on that. All right. What happens is I'll call our meeting to order. It's lovely to see everybody. And we do not, Lucinda, just double checking, we don't have anyone that we need to approve to be Zoom. There's no.
I need to recommend. Charmaine White is, I'm gonna put her in the camera.
So, yeah. So we would need to approve to Zoom all of our voting members. Right? Just trying to think. And
Charmaine is aging backwards.
so Charmaine is not a voting member, so we do not need to approve, well, we want to make sure she's there. And we have her. Hey, Charmaine.
Hi, hello.
And our meeting started and everything.
Voting members participating online.
So we're good. That's what we're figuring out right now. All right, so I'd like to call the meeting to order. I appreciate everybody being here. I think I did that twice now, so we are really in order. Let's go around and do our introductions like we always do. Carlin, I'm gonna look to my left and start with you if you don't mind.
So Carl Lynn's director of Charlottesville County.
Ted Reed, John.
Al Morgan, John Rule representative.
Lucas Ames, John Urban representative.
Donovan Akil, Albemarle County.
Lloyd Snook, City of
Can
Charlottesville.
you hear me?
Yes.
I can't hear you.
Can others
Okay.
hear us?
Hold on just a minute, so, but, just wait and see. So while they're working on that, you go ahead, I think.
The people on Zoom can't hear us.
Beal Pistol, Kirkley.
The audio is coming through for me.
So, right.
I'm gonna go and abbreviate.
Sandy Shackelford with the Charlottesville Albemarle County.
Lucinda Shannon, with the Charlottesville, Albemarle, and
Christine.
Or CJPC. Excuse me, technically.
That's okay, introduce yourself, please.
Brian Pinks, from Charlottesville City Council.
And I'm gonna switch to my back here.
Well, I'm Charles Transit. Bed Chambers, Transportation Manager, City of Charlottesville.
The Secretary of
Other in front of
Sarah Manning, Vice Chair,
That's Thomas. And before you take your coat off, would you please introduce yourself?
Michael Warren.
There you go. Thank you, Michael. Appreciate it. Now let's go to the who's on Zoom to introduce. Charmaine, I can see you.
Charmaine White with Albemarle Transportation.
All right, and Wood? I think Wood is there, is he not?
Yes.
You see Wood? Maybe he's not.
Wood Hudson, ERPT.
There you go. And who else is up there?
Stephanie, the consulting team, will introduce them as we go
Okay,
today.
we can go that way.
Oh, we have Kristen.
There we go. So I think we're all right. For everybody, right? Okay, good. With that, you have an agenda before you, and I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
Move to approve the agenda.
So Brian has been moved to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Becca has seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any exceptions? All right, and you have in your packet our draft meeting minutes from October the 27th. Did anyone note any minor edits or anything that needed to be addressed in the minutes? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
I move to approve minutes.
Thank you, Hal. Hal has made the motion. Is there a second? B has made the second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any nays and any abstentions? All right, I think we have our minutes approved. We're moving right along. Lucinda, do we have anyone from the public online who wanted to speak?
If you are online and would like to participate in public comment, please raise your hand using the Zoom feature at the bottom of the screen.
I don't see anyone. Do you want?
No, you're gonna only see the panelists. We're looking at other
Oh,
attendees in
you
the background.
got it, okay.
Nobody else can raise their hand.
All right, how about behind? Is it- All right. Okay, then we are ready to begin our first presentation of the afternoon, which is the Foothills Area Mobility System. And I actually am pretty excited about this because I understand this is something that we had talked about from the very beginning of establishing the Regional Transit Partnership, was to figure out a way to get all of our transit systems under the same, how do I want to say this? So that to the community, we look like we're one system, right? And that they can interface, if they need a transit provider without having to go to JAUNT or to CAB, or when they want to move from one system to the other to have to access them separately. I think, is that fair, Kristen?
Yes, do you want to do a high level recent before first speaker talks?
Yeah, so there's a federal program called 5310, and the purpose of the program is to augment public transit to improve services for people with disabilities and older adults. And they do that through coordination and providing capital for expenses, and also part of it can be mobility management. JAUNT used to provide the mobility management services, and they asked us if we could apply for it because we're a regional agency and we're not providing direct transit services.
Right.
It makes sense for us to do that. And so we're looking at, we talked to DRPT about it, and they suggested that we look at Rappahannock's regional mobility management program, and kind of do something similar to that. So we met with Rappahannock, and Kristen has been super helpful with providing us with information and helping us with our application. So we wanted to have her come and talk with you about their program and how they started, and so that you have a better understanding of mobility management and what we could do in this region with that funding.
So this is pretty exciting, and Kristen, you are obviously the model. So I want to make sure, is there anyone online that cannot hear us right now?
I think it's Kristen, we can't hear us.
And Kristen is, we're not seeing you, Kristen.
I can hear you. Let me see if I can share my screen with you real quick.
Yeah, it'd be nice to see you. That would be.
There you go. Okay. Now I think you can see what I can see.
So my understanding, Kristen, is I'm just gonna go, we're figuring out a little bit of technology. I looked, the Rappahannock Rapidan Regional Commission, you serve the counties of Culpeper, Fauquier, Madison, Orange, Rappahannock, and the towns of Culpeper, Gordonsville, Madison, Orange, Remington, Plains, Warrington, and Washington.
Yes, ma'am.
Our community.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, I guess we'll turn it over to you. As long as you can hear us, we're good. Thank you.
Okay. So hopefully you all can hear me now, right?
Yes.
Very
Okay.
good.
So I was just going to go over kind of how we started and what we do now. We've had quite an evolution take place over the last few years, and ours is a model. Our mobility management system is a model. It was the first one call, one click center that was established in Virginia, and that came out of a need that was identified in the community to try and centralize mobility supports for the target audience. And the Department of Rail and Public Transit considers the target audience to be older adults or people with disabilities. And the regional commission's role is to try and kind of bring people together when there are issues that are faced by more than one location or more than one locality, and to try and create solutions that are obviously targeted responses, but also really great solutions for the community at large. And when this option came available for funding to be able to implement one of the Chisholm directed solutions, we kind of jumped on that. So one of the things that happened was in 2009, the state of Virginia started to establish a Chisholm plan, which is Coordinated Human Services Mobility. And that's basically a set of best practices that are identified to support people with all kinds of needs for them to be able to access services in the community. And they identify a lot of different strategies, and those strategies can be applied at communities at different levels. And some work for some communities and some don't for others. And so the plan is very flexible in that it's offered two parts of Virginia for us to kind of pick and choose our types of solutions that we want to implement or try out. And in 2009, we started with the call center, and it was this concept that was very new to the region because everything prior to this was very isolated or siloed. And we ended up introducing this call center, and I'll be jumping through different types of materials here. And everything that I cover has a lot more in-depth information, and I can go into any of it at any time. Feel free to interrupt me, or if I move too quickly to ask me to go back. But we started in 2009 with funding to establish this kind of concept of coordinated human service mobility in the region. And then in 2017, actually established the call center in Virginia with a single phone number. And that was really just to provide a single location resource for people to be able to call and get information for any type of transportation need in the region. And they were able to call this one number and get all of the information about where public transit starts or ends, how much it costs, where it goes to, who can ride it, what the eligibility was, and for public transit, for private transit, for volunteer transportation, for any types of subsidy programs or other types of resources that might have been available for transportation. And so it was kind of meant to become this resource for the community. In the first year, they got over 1,000 calls, and our region only only has a population of about 200,000 people. So this was pretty substantial because the funding that was initially provided does not provide money for advertising services. And for this introduction of the system and this support was done all through community channels. And it was very successful. And they started with 1.5 employees. And immediately ended up realizing that that was probably not going to be enough, and there were a lot of needs that we were seeing that were falling through the gaps in services that were already being provided in the community. And so when you start kind of really touching base with those transportation needs on a daily basis, you start to identify trends, you start to realize that there's a lot of work to do. So we got to work, and we started in from 2017 all the way through 2018. We ended up providing services and expanding into a role to coordinate transportation for a volunteer driver program. And then we ended up expanding into offering gas card subsidies. And so in the first few years, we were building out what we were doing from just information in referral to actual provision of some type of service or connection to a service. In 2018, our system experienced, and many of you all have probably experienced this as well, that change in federal administration when the new presidential party took over. They diverted funding away from transportation towards other priorities, and they kind of let us know as planners, hey, you're gonna have to find money from somewhere else. And I remember specifically sitting in a meeting with planners in 2018 and 2017 and thinking, oh yeah, right, this is a federal change. It's probably not going to trickle down to a local level. But go figure, in a couple of years, we ended up getting a direct order from our funder, Department of Rail and Public Transit, to diversify our funding, because the funding cut had trickled down to our level, and we were going to face a reduction. And in 2019, that reduction in federal funding coming down to the state level kind of coincided with several other issues that we were facing as a region. We were facing losing some contracts for public transportation, and then our programs were also facing losing transportation funding at a local level. And so that didn't affect us directly, but the programs that we were referring people to were going to lose funding. And so we went through this mitigation process with our community in 2019, and we tried to come up with solutions of how to deal with these issues with the loss in funding. There's no magic checks that we could find, and we knew we had to come up with some kind of different type of out-of-the-box solution. And when we did that, when we met with all of these community programs and we talked through these solutions, we came up with this collaborative entity, and collaborative in a working sense, a very different sense than we had ever experienced it. We had this mobility call center in place, and we had a network, an information network established, but we didn't have a working collaborative. So in 2019, when we mitigated, we came up with a solution to introduce an umbrella organization, and we named that the Regional Transportation Collaborative, which is similar to this group that's meeting here today. And we introduced a concept of leveraging resources and reducing local competition for funding and trying to unify our mobility solutions in a much more strategic and working way. And so we spent the next few years prior to the pandemic trying to introduce this concept to the region and to all of our partners. And we came up with what we feel like is a really successful model in our area. So we have this call center, and it's a very simple concept. You call one phone number, you get all of this information, and you get connected to resources. But that's just like the foundation of everything else that we do to manage mobility needs in our region. And because we introduced this collaborative entity to be able to work on transportation needs in a team way and in a way that is efficient, that is really looking at priorities at a regional level versus each program kind of just fighting for their own, we've really been successful in our impacts that we've been making and the types of programs we've been able to introduce. One of the kind of illustrations I like to show people when I present is what things look like for us prior to 2020. Before 2020, we're kind of here in this last house. We had our call center, and we got our money from DRPT, and we had this goal of serving the locality's needs and increasing access to mobility. And then in our region, we had all of these other houses, all of these other programs that were doing very similar things. If you look at the goals across these programs, very similar. The audience that they served, very similar. If we look at where money was coming from, there's a lot of overlap of where money was coming from to serve all of these different programs. We were competing with each other on a local level for local grants to introduce solutions for the same people for the same goal. And not all of us talked to each other. We didn't have consistent communication. In 2020, when we introduced the Regional Transportation Collaborative idea, it was very foreign to everyone that we were talking to. This idea that we could really leverage our resources if we worked together, that we could really leverage grants and local funding if we collaborated. And so we introduced this concept and we established this really stable communication between all of our programs. We still serve our same audience with our similar goals, while also each of these organizations is free to exercise their own additional goals and individual funding and goals. So we work together to source funding and utilize it in a collaborative sense. And we've eliminated that local competition. So now when there's a grant available, for example, from a local foundation, instead of all 7 of these entities competing against each other to get that money, we meet together and we decide, where are the priorities? What are we really looking at? Where would this money really be best spent? And what projects do we have ready to utilize or to implement to use those funds? And who's best at managing it? And because we have all of these little houses in our group now, we're eligible for much more funding than we were in the past. So if one program wants a set of funding that they wouldn't be eligible to apply for, somebody within our collaborative is eligible to apply. They're eligible to be the applicant. And those applications that we submit for funding are much more lucrative to stakeholders and to funders because we have such a strong collaboration and partnership within these programs. We also leverage resources, and that goes from everything from tiny little resources to, I have a color copier, you don't have to buy one, you can use mine, to I need a marketing staff, but I only need them for 5 hours, and so do 2 other programs. So let's employ a marketing staff full-time and we'll share them among 4 programs. Or I need a vehicle to provide volunteer transportation, but I only need it a couple of days a week, and 2 other programs need that. Well, let's buy a vehicle. We will share that vehicle among programs to fulfill the needs, and so it's used every day. So we do this leveraging of these resources from a really small perspective all the way to a large perspective, and all of the partners that are established under the collaborative have access to those resources throughout the year and access to grant writing and grant support and funding. The Mobility Center now is much more diverse than just one phone number and that 1.5 staff that it started with in 2017. Now we do a lot more. We utilize a cloud software, and that cloud software has become the foundation and infrastructure of all of our mobility management. It's a online software that anybody can use. It's a nationwide product, and it's completely adaptable to whatever your needs are. We offer this as another resource to our partners, but we also utilize it as our infrastructure. We keep a tremendous amount of information about the people we serve through that one phone number. Through that one phone number, we're able to glean so much information about who we're interacting with and what that interaction means on an impact level, and how it translates to the amount of money that's invested by stakeholders and grant programs into our community, and what that actually ends up looking like. And so we collect a lot of information through the software. We collect information on clients. I'm trying to move my screen down, I apologize. Every time I do it, it gets hidden. We collect information on clients and on their interaction with our one phone number. We collect all of their demographic information, And then we keep a record of every time that they interact with our system, every time that they've called, every time that we've called them back, every time that they've gotten some kind of a support. They got a gas card on this day for this reason. They got a ride on this day for this reason. They needed a ride this day for this reason, but they couldn't find one, and this is why. So we keep this information on each client, and it allows us to glean a lot on the needs of our individuals that we're serving, what trends we may be seeing, and also how to create solutions that might impact some of this. We keep information on all of our communication that goes in through that one phone number, and it translates to a lot. This is an example of some of that data. This is our communication broken down by the reason people call. And you can see this giant red piece is medical reasons. This is all people who have called in or communicated with us through our text or website to get information about traveling for a medical reason. And we can break that information down into a lot of different facets. We also have information broken down on, how much need is coming out of our program, out of our communities every day, what that means to each individual locality, and what their response is, how they feel like that guides their investment into public transit or other types of mobility solutions. This is an example of all of the requests that we get for people to travel for medical reasons every single day. It's very overwhelming when you look at it in different types of sense of these data brackets. So we collect a tremendous amount of information through this software that we use with the call center, and it allows us to kind of analyze that on any type of parameter that we like. We look at it on a yearly basis, but we also look at it on a quarterly basis, and also by need when we see things that come up that are unique, that we don't have a solution in place for. And we, through our mobility management and our call center, we implement a tri-core service model, and that has provided us with a lot of success. We go through 3 different models that are really important to us. The livable community is something that AARP defines, and our area agency on aging follows. And so every solution that we try to implement through our call center is meant to benefit the community at large. So these solutions are for the target audience, but they're also meant to be something that the community can utilize. So for our call center, when we pick up the phone, we don't say, "Are you old? Do you live in this county?" We say, "What do you need? Let us talk about it. Let's have a conversation and figure out how we can help you." And so we don't eligibility anybody out. That call number is meant to benefit the community at large. We also operate on a non-competitive filter model. This one I think is particularly interesting to your area because you have more substantial public transportation supports than we do. We have limited public transportation, but it is an invested solution by our localities and by the state. We don't want to compete with that. We don't want to compete every time we introduce a new solution, have any kind of issue with us competing with funding or solutions or customers that may be better served on public transit. So we operate on this non-competitive filter model, which basically means that anytime someone calls in to the call center, when they tell us what their need is, we first try to match them up with public transit because it is an invested solution by the localities. So if they are able to be served on public transit, we give them that information first. If they're not able to be served on public transit, then we match them up with any volunteer driver programs that we may be partnered with that might be able to provide them with a ride. There are many times when volunteer transportation and public transit do not offer the solution that's needed. And when that happens, we go through some different conversations with the individuals to try and figure out whether a gas card subsidy would be an appropriate solution. And we walk through that to see if those individuals need that. And we partner with 11 different locations throughout our region to provide gas cards and distribute them for us in a location that's convenient for those individuals. So by doing that, we're reserving our financial or our subsidized resources for last. So we're keeping a reserve on those because they're the hardest to get. And we're using our public transit first because it's the most invested solution. The last type of model that we use is that leveraged collaborative, where we're using our resources in a partnership, and all of our partners are able to provide or utilize resources at any level that they need throughout the year. So it is fluctuating, and we run the collaborative as in a model that enables and empowers those partners to utilize those resources to provide the supports that they're already providing, and to do that well. See if I can get back to my presentation here. So when the community calls into the mobility center, they're able to get a host of different types of resources. Right now, in the last few years, we've expanded our model to add a lot more services than just information and referral. We provide case management and wraparound service referral. So we've partnered with other stakeholders that do those types of services, and we refer callers who fit that need to those individuals. A lot of times when people call in, they're calling in for help, and that conversation leads to a lot of other needs other than transportation. So we connect with these other partners to be able to connect the dots so that people don't fall through the cracks when we're having a conversation with somebody and they're saying, I need to get to the pharmacy, I've lost my medication, this, that, or the other. Well, maybe they would benefit from some help with home health coming in. So we need to connect them to that type of resource as well as giving them transportation. We also connect them directly with volunteer ride coordination. So we coordinate on behalf of the other programs. So we have 5 programs that we coordinate volunteer transportation with directly, meaning their phone calls come in directly to the call center. People can ask for a ride and we coordinate that ride. We communicate with their volunteers, and we track all of their data and their mileage through our system. That allows us to be able to get that data, to capture that data, to provide all individuals who need transportation with a kind of a centralized type of support, while those programs can remain small with small budgets and maintain what they do best, which is recruiting and training volunteers. We also subsidize extreme need rides. We partner with a couple of different programs to provide a reduced fee rides when none of these other types of supports will offer a solution. We offer Medicaid transportation facilitation because we serve a vulnerable population who have difficulty navigating their own Medicaid benefits. And so we can help them schedule that transportation if they have that need. We partner with a local foundation to get funds to give out gas cards to individuals, but we also do what's called a gas scholarship. So we have types of individuals who have unique needs, who can drive, but have frequent chronic health issues where they can't afford this gas transportation. They're going from place to place to place each week. So we'll provide them with a temporary scholarship and then also refer them to a case management support to see if there's any long-term changes they can make to help impact that. We also partner with some area health clinics to provide extended access gas cards. A lot of our programs, free clinics in our region, will refer individuals to UVA Health System to get supports in Charlottesville. And when that happens, we partner with those programs to provide those individuals with a gas card so that they will follow up on those diagnostic reports and trying to finish out those health solutions. We also introduce lots of different pilot programming throughout the year and offer supports to volunteers. Our volunteers provide a lot of support in our region. We don't have Uber and Lyft here. We only have a small footprint of public transportation. We have one connection to Charlottesville a few days a week. Other than that, we do not connect to any other locality. We do not connect interlocality within our region either. So our system is a really difficult equation, and we rely a lot on volunteer transportation to kind of make up the difference of that. Our volunteers in FY22 provided over 7,000 rides, and we tracked over 100,000 miles that they donated. That ended up their mileage and their hours equaling out to over $350,000 in charitable donation equivalency to our community. So that is all coordinated through our call center. We also provide a lot of funding to recruit and vet those volunteers because we know how much we rely on them. We provide money to do recognition and appreciation for them. We do pilot programming for those volunteers, such as gas incentive programs. And we partner with our community programs to do data studies, surveys, need analysis, and then also grant applications and community engagement. So we have a lot going on from just this one single phone number. It has branched out incredibly over the last few years. When we got this bad news that that transportation funding was being reduced in 2019, and we went through this mitigation process, I don't think any of us thought at that time that we would be able to hold on to our program, let alone experience such substantial growth. But in the last few years, because of the collaborative that we've introduced, and because we have broadened out our supports and services and utilized this technology, we've really been able to experience a tremendous amount of growth and serve a large amount of people in our region. I think that's everything from me. And that was a lot. So I'm sorry, jumped around quite a bit, but if you have any questions, please let me know. I can't hear you again. I'm not sure why.
There you go. One of the problems, I'm just gonna repeat what I said for you, Kristen, is one of the problems with showing the Cadillac is thinking that our region will just be able to mirror whatever it is they're doing, but we have a completely different dynamic here. We've got public transportation like they said they do not have. We have Uber and Lyft like they do not have. And so for us at the PDC, what we were thinking behind this and what we've talked to our commission about is exploring this over a year or two to find out where are those gaps that we're not meeting the needs of the community, and using something like that software and a one-call, one-click center to be able to find out from community members what is it that they're needing that we are going to not be able to provide them the service that we need by something that already exists, and start to collect that data so that we can then build, if we can then begin to fill those gaps like Pam's has done. Perhaps we need small bands and we need to coordinate with all these other agencies, and we need to find ways to get folks where they need to be that we don't already have in this region. But I want to be very clear, we are not necessarily thinking we're going to be able to replicate everything that they do. We want an opportunity to explore this funding and see how we can get it to work in our area for what we need.
So just accurate, so I think I hear you maybe saying in some of the outlying districts, in some of the counties around us, or in our rural areas perhaps, is that what you're saying?
It could be urban or rural. Like I encourage you guys to ask her some of these, like what are these gap needs that they've been able to fill, and what that might look like for us. Because for us, we're all brand new at this. We're just learning about this funding. We're trying to get as much information from the RPT and from peer agencies that are doing it to say what would it look like here, so that we can build an application, to apply.
But we're not gonna be providing transportation services at the TJPDC. We would be working with partners,
Right.
transit agencies to meet those needs.
Right.
And we would be
Yeah,
providing
because
support
that's right.
to meet
That's right. Because 5310 can be used for capital purchases,
Oh.
but the TJPDC would not necessarily want to have vehicles or a fleet. We would partner with folks that we could pass through mobility funds for those types of purchases.
And a lot of our information that we gather does guide public transit decisions. It helps the localities know whether they need to up their investment in public transit. They need to add more stops or more routes. It helps to guide whether the public transit route needs to run longer. All of a sudden I've gotten X amount of calls the last 4 months that need to travel at this time in the evening, but I don't have a public transit route that matches up with that. So I pass that information along to these providers so that they can make informed decisions. The only way to gather that information is to have some kind of interaction with the individuals that you're trying to serve. And the one call center offers that at a really, really minimal investment. If you're talking about the lowest part or the smallest part version of our model, 1 phone number, 1.5 staff, and that's it. And you can really start to branch off there to, like you said, create solutions that are unique to your region, that meet your individual's needs.
So that,
Yes, how much does the target audience factor into the considerations for the grant and such? Does once you translate into an urban setting that does have public transit and you have huge populations, but yet I hear the target, can you reveal a little bit of that maybe between our guests and?
Yeah, so DRPT defines the target audience as now this year as 65 and older or someone with a disability. They do not strictly define disability. Disability is an open term and you don't have to prove that. So there's a lot of versions of disability and what people consider, whether they consider themselves able or not.
It's still very much tied to a target audience.
Yes, and like she said, it's not that they won't serve other people, but that is what the funding is designed.
Okay, thank you.
And every solution that we put into place, every single solution that we've tried to come up with in our region has ended up, within a week or 2 weeks of putting that solution into place, you come across a unique need that cannot be served in that solution. We continuously are surprised with new needs that don't fall into those solutions. So that's one of the things that's great about this model, is because you can continually add different types of solutions or get rid of things that didn't work and try new ones, because you have data kind of backing those decisions up.
I'd like to just ask Carl and Ted to react, because I see Carl nodding his head a lot during this. Your all's thoughts would be great.
So I actually have had a cursory conversation with Christine about this. I'm all in favor of exploring this concept. I think it adds value for CAT in that the infrastructure necessary to answer, we get a volume of calls, especially like in the peak periods. And I'm using my supervisory staff, who could be in the street actually helping to make service run better, to answer calls. That is not, in my humble opinion, the proper way to use that talent to answer phone calls. So if the backstop is they can create that model, sort of what Ari Tech has in-house for CAT, I'm all for it, because it actually helps long-term if we ever spin off and they create the model. It flows to whatever that full or more their authority is. It's almost like the blueprint, they'll create the blueprint that follows whatever entity is created.
Okay, Gail, thoughts?
Well, I think to some degree, John kind of does coordination, but our economics might not support that long term. The other thing is John needs to really focus on our core business at this point. So, so having another group kind of helping herd the cats would be really helpful. I just hope as we think this thing through, John has a call center, so I would hate to replicate the capability.
Right.
So if it means just adding more reservations or call takers or whatever. When I was in Tulsa, our call center handled both fixed route and paratransit equally well. So, so there's always that possibility. So
Carl would be happy to let you handle it.
at some point, if there's a need, certainly do that. But
You care what you ask for.
I've done it before, so now I'm asking them.
Well, so that's interesting, and that's why we're all around the table, and why it's good to know.
So I am, and I'm, Ted's got a great, call center there. His team is very well trained, they do it, outstanding. But there's a technology issue for the CAT that, we can't solve necessarily right now, but this grant may be able to tap into doing that. So that's why I'm really happy with that, because, for technology for us is I need to be able to get to real time to be able to move away from predictive, because what the model is showing right now is we put the schedule in, people think the bus is coming, the bus is not running, it disappears.
Yeah.
Because it's pinging and it doesn't, and
There's
it
no
doesn't,
ping.
there's no ping. So that's where people are frustrated, and I can't move to real time until there's some infrastructure pieces I need to get done. It's pretty expensive to make that switch. So if we can work through that, then that actually is kind of the backdrop where it would allow everybody to see real time what's happening on the street, as opposed to our folks, which is why we're getting the call, is this bus running? I see it, I'm gonna know it's not running today, because we don't have, a bus or a staff.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing, I guess, is, and what we're hearing is that the 5310 could help pay for, sort of. Is that what I'm hearing, sort of?
That we need to explore.
Yeah.
Yeah, we would have to.
Yeah,
Yeah, but it could possibly, that's what, yes.
Yeah, because between this grant and what it could fund and other opportunities for mobility as a service, which is more like what would, and we've had presentations on that as well. And UTS is all, would love, to be part of the mobility as a service piece. And how does that dovetail into what this grant might offer, so that I think we might be not mixing metaphors, but like see how the two could dovetail together. Because in our community where we do have Uber and Lyft, and we do have public transit, fixed transit, and et cetera, that maybe the combination of a targeted audience plus mobility as a service could bring some of these advantages. Is that?
Yeah, so, software ride scheduling software is one of the eligible expenses under the grant program.
Okay.
So.
And I'm thinking of, was it Dallas? Was that the presentation?
Are you able to say sort of, I guess, what is the infrastructure, technology infrastructure piece that you were referring to that you're lacking?
So
Or is that a really complicated thing that
it's a little complicated, but so I have JAUNT in the room, and we've been going through a series of upgrades on our existing software with our provider. Is ETA, right? ETA. And it's still predictive. Everybody's like, oh, it's real time. It's not real time, but so what that means is it's based on a schedule we give them. And based on that schedule, it pings at certain points to see if the bus is tracking. So what happens is we need to get away from that, where the repeater on the bus is actually giving you every 30 seconds, real-time information where the bus is. That infrastructure, that hardware upgrade is pretty expensive. And really what you're also doing is turning each one of the buses really into a cell phone, because it allows it to really communicate back and forth. And as we go from 800 megahertz to the next generation, every time we do that on repeater, we will have to do that for an upgrade for every single one of our buses.
Unless you upgrade. Until and unless.
Every upgrade we do will have to match what's
If it's
available.
radio based.
Right, correct. Well, yeah, that.
Well, in fact, we have ETA in Tulsa. The same vendor, and we got to the point where you could, I think our GPS tracking is probably different than what you're talking about. And we were able to, if you were at a bus stop, you have some of this, but you text the bus stop number, and it'll tell you when your bus is actually arriving. And we did that, and it actually worked pretty well. And then You can also on Google Transit, track the bus as well. So that is an evolution that will be very helpful to get to. We want to get to real-time tracking of our demand response vehicles as well. We're looking at upgrading some of our technology that we have today so that not only can people book their trips by themselves, not going to reservationists, but the system would tell them when their vehicle is about to arrive. So we're trying to do the same.
Can I ask a question? We have a presentation down so that we can make sure that the people that are on Zoom, we can see a hand that's up or anybody that might be there. And this may be a naive question, maybe Charmaine can help me with this, but this sounds like the tracking that we've had in our county public schools on our buses for years. Charmaine? We can hear you, you're muted, so.
Say that again, Diantha.
I just know that our county public schools has had
I think some of
real-time
the school
tracking
buses.
on school buses for years.
Right. Indeed. If I'm hearing you correctly, yes.
Yeah, yeah. So is that what this, because I know when I was on the school board, Dr. Halls used to have it on his phone and he could put in a bus number and say that bus is on Riley Road turning to this, to do it, then this, and you still have that, I assume. Is that what you want?
We do.
Yes, I'm sure my English.
The thing that Garland was talking about is the software really predicts where the bus is going to be based on
Okay,
locations, whereas I guess what you're talking about
is it actual?
actual communication with the satellite.
Yeah.
Because we have the GPSs on our buses where we can track and see where they are.
So everybody has.
I'm confused.
Everybody wants that, yes.
Large GPS on-
Everybody has that.
Right, if you don't have that, you can't do any of the
Exactly.
acts, right? So that
Yes.
allows you the individual to potentially gauge where the bus is. What I'm talking about here is getting away from using a schedule that we print that says the bus is gonna be there at a certain time. And it's matching to see whether it is on time to the schedule. I wanna do away with that and have it tell us exactly where the bus is at all times. And that is an upgrade of hardware to make that happen.
Yeah, if that's in that, if you think that's another generation.
That's the next evolution. And every time that the software to keep that relevant upgrades, we will have to upgrade.
Okay.
And that's more expensive.
Right. Right. Yes, now.
The real beneficiary of replicating this, the FAM system would be the rural communities. Because, Fluvanna, I talked to board supervisors, they say, well, people can't go to medical trips because you only go one trip into Charlottesville and one trip back. So person has to go in for a medical trip, has to wait the whole day. And they said something for some people, a person who's elderly or some kind of disability, that's pretty hard, So it's a way to upgrade the service or upgrade, let's see what other resources are available. I mean, we actually have, we have a program, the Fluvanna Leadership Development Program, which people go through and learn about the community and stuff, and then you do a project. One of the projects this past year was that they talked to people at for those area mobility about replicating that system in Fluvanna County. And it was a pretty interesting report. Cindy was there for the presentation, she was a copy of what they did. So it's there will be a lot of interest in rural counties.
And that makes sense to me about the rural piece, yes. And rural Albemarle County as well, I'm sure. We all have rural areas.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm not sure the city does.
Not
The, yes.
Okay, I'm trying to understand all this. I am Joe Blow trying to get a bus ride. So right now, or J Joe. Right now, I have a schedule for you. I have a schedule. I know the bus is gonna come at 11:30. Okay. So you're talking about, and then I heard others say, you're looking for real time. And I want to ask if UTS has real time. You do have that. So they have that. And so if you have this upgrade in software and hardware, how is that different from does that mean then that I can see that the bus is gonna be here instead of 11:30, it's gonna be here at 11:20?
Yes.
Right.
You know, when we ride in Metro or the bus stops, I think in Richmond even do this, that there'll be like a digital screen that says this bus is arriving in 8 minutes, this bus is arriving in 3 minutes.
Yeah.
It'll have that detailed level of information.
Yes.
And the problem is that Pat has that now, at the downtown station, it'll have all the routes and how many minutes, but it's how it calculates those minutes, that's not
It's
right.
It's still correct, it's still calculated based on a schedule that we have.
Right, it's not calculating based on what's actually happening.
Correct.
So it delivers this sense to the public that, oh, there is the digital board that I'm used to looking at in other places. Oh, it says the trolley will be here in 24 minutes, but that's based on the schedule, not based on where the bus is.
Now it's starting to make sense.
In this new system, I would be looking at my smartphone saying, okay, where's the bus?
And it would actually tell you that the bus is coming in 5 minutes. and
5
it's
minutes,
coming out.
right.
And it would be accurate.
And so people who don't have a smartphone,
Mostly. So, and I don't, and Ben is, and Ben is, knows, cap limitations. We've had these conversations, when he was at Kimberly Thorne, about helping cap get to that next, iteration of things. But I would say as a consultant, I don't know, I want to say as a consultant, that, that next generation of where we need to be, we are eventually are gonna have to get there for the system to become more productive anyway.
Yeah.
This is a matter of the timing and the cost to make it happen.
And caution though, it is it's somewhat of an illusion still, even when you have all the right generation and all the right equipment, because if the system is predicting the bus is 5 minutes away and a car accident happens right in front of the bus,
That's right.
and the system has some AI in it, but not enough to say
That's right.
it's predicting it's 5 minutes away, and then it continues to predict it's 5 minutes away for forever until whatever happened right in front of the bus. So I just caution that it's not like everybody looks at it and assumes it's gospel truth, and it's just way better,
Yeah, so,
but it still has some vulnerabilities.
So the idea would be that the Fund 5310, which is what we're talking about here in this wrap-up, would help to pay.
I'm not certain it will pay for his software, no.
No, he said his own money. Get a lot of-
yeah.
It's not designed to figure out. Right, right, if there was a mobility management one call, one click center, and we could access real-time information of where and what is going on there, we can connect with our agencies so that we can provide very accurate information without saying, actually, I think that bus was pulled off, but I don't know, I'll have to call Cat and find out, because there's no system for us to access.
I got you.
There you go.
Okay, that helps.
It's a complement.
It's a
Yes.
compliment.
It's an amplification of services.
And Kristen, while we have you, can I ask a question specifically about your program that I believe I know the answer to, but I think it'd be important to share is the RRRC, the Rappahannock Rapidan Regional Commission, only staffs Kristen to manage this program, but they receive funding for several positions that they pass through to their partner agencies so that they can operate, they can share operations of the call center and have staff at multiple places serving the community. So Kristen doesn't have a team of like 6 people sitting in her office answering phones, but she may provide funding through pass-through to a Java or to a community service board or to whomever agencies there might be that could support, for example, the running of a van or the paying for a part of a van and staff to help manage this program.
Yes, we have,
That's my point.
we have 9.
How you guys do that?
Yeah, we have 9 right now staff that we get paid for through different parts of 5310. And those are housed with 4 different partner agencies. And we do a strategic process every year. Every July, we meet with our partners to figure out what their needs are, what the trends have been, and what our data shows. And we discuss through what needs to be in that application from 5310 for the following year. For example, this past July, I met with our public transit provider and asked if they needed an additional staff for their call center. An additional staff for their call center, because all the public transit agency does have a call center, but they're inundated with calls and needs that they couldn't serve. We also provided extra support for our call center to alleviate DSS, who was receiving calls from people who are vulnerable. And also we employ different types of employees, like the marketing position, like I explained, that helps to refer people back to public transit, to available resources, to new mobility programs, all of that.
And I think, Mike, you had something you want to say for a few minutes ago.
Thank you. I was actually asking that vein, because I know over in the valley, it was a big thing that you experienced, like the different agencies were, they were trying to fund transportation system. They didn't have this call center. I was kind of trying to bring back a conversation back to that, but I got beat by Christine.
Okay, all right, sounds good.
And then if I may, I want to share 2 comments online because we produced the comment section. So
Yeah,
that wasn't
so
distracting,
wasn't
but there were
distracting.
2 comments shared. One of them was by Ethan Tate of the Community Foundation. He said this is an enormous need for the local nonprofit sector, particularly those who serve seniors, those with mobility issues, and youth trying to get to after-school programs.
Yeah.
And then Wood Hudson commented and shared the link for the open standards for visual location data sharing. And so he put the link to a website on the transit feed specifications and providing users with real-time data.
Right, fascinating. Oh, so where do we go from here? I'm your official timekeeper, so I am. So I know our next speaker is supposed to be starting pretty soon. Where do we go from here?
We just wanted to share this information with you all. We've already gotten consensus from the commission to pursue the application, and we'll continue the information shared with you all. So we intend to apply.
So this is our 101. All right. Any follow-up questions or anything from
If anybody has evidence of need for this or need for rides for seniors or people with disabilities in the community, it would help the application if you share that with me.
Al, you might want to jump on that. And just share it with Lucinda, I guess, Lucinda.
Yeah.
But I think we talk about Region 10, those type of folks, to the service provider.
The Region 10, the human service providers?
Yeah.
Well, we have been talking with some of them. They don't have like hard data. So I haven't gotten a lot yet.
Yeah, a lot of them receive calls and can't really help them. And so they're not necessarily logging where those tracks are. Right?
Right.
They're saying they'll pass them on to someone else and then they'll go to somebody else. They don't necessarily have good data that they can share.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, with that, any other comments or questions? Kristen, we really appreciate you joining us today. Thank you very much. This was fascinating.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Oh, well, we appreciate your time. Thank you very much. All right. Then we are going to move on to our governance study introduction. Stephanie is, there she is. I see Stephanie. And Lucinda, did you want to introduce or kick this discussion off a little bit?
Yeah, so many of you, well, I think all of you have heard that we started a governance study. It's a follow-up to some of the recommendations from the Regional Transit Vision Plan. And Stephanie will talk about it. So we received funding from DRPT, Albemarle County and the City of Charlottesville and TJPDC to conduct this governance study and hired AECOM to help us with it. So I'll let Stephanie tell you more about the program.
And just to remind folks, we're talking about the governance study for what an authority. We're looking at the authority piece of this governance study. Okay. Stephanie, you want to take it away?
Yes, let me know if you can hear me clearly.
I think we can hear you clearly. Yes.
Excellent. All right, thank you all very much for giving us this chance to meet with you with the RTP. I think we've met with many of you already in the room, either through the steering committee meeting or with one-on-one phone calls or Teams calls. But today, since I know many of you have already heard about the intro, we would this will be to give an introduction to those who have not, who are not familiar with the study, as well as give some updates. And so to provide some introductory information, we'll go over the study goals and objectives, and then dive into the progress so far, some of the interviews that we've had, and give updates on those, discuss the next steps, and then have a brief time for questions from all of you in the room. And so the goal for this study, as Lucinda mentioned earlier, is to identify strategies that we can implement the recommendations from the Transit Vision plan that just concluded. And this is twofold. The two main objectives are, one, to find options for transit governance within the Region 10 area, and then two, how to increase transportation investment. So how can we increase funding to be able to produce the outcomes that were suggested in the Transit Vision Plan? So this is going to be a year-long study, and we kicked off a few months ago. And so this will carry out through December 2023. And so you'll be seeing me more often. And it's a 5-phase approach. We are currently wrapping up with phase 1, which is the existing conditions, which includes doing a general overview of the existing service in the region, doing some stakeholder engagement, and then doing a review of the current legislation. The next, we'll do a peer study. Then in phase 3 is when we look at the funding piece. So we'll look at what are potential sources of revenue that we can generate. Well, once we have a good understanding of the funding piece, then we can develop some scenarios for governance and funding allocations. And this is where we'll have a lot of stakeholder engagement to get your thoughts and your feedback, so that we can bounce around ideas on what would be best for the Region 10 area. And phase 5 just includes finalizing all the information we've gathered and completing drafts and final reports. So what we've been able to accomplish so far over the last several weeks is the existing conditions. So we had a few one-on-one meetings with the stakeholders. We spoke with Garland, Mr. Williams in the room, Mr. Reek from JAUNT, Rebecca White from UTS. We were able to speak with another representative from one of the local town governments, and we will be, and this is our presentation to the RTP, so with you together, be able to get some feedback and your thoughts on the direction for the rest of this study. And we've also initiated the legislative review. And so I'll just go ahead and give you updates on the outcomes from some of our meetings and some of the document reviews we've done and we continue to do. And so we'll start with CAT, which was actually our first meeting, our first interview. And so from our discussions and document reviews, background on CAT, it was it started in the 70s, in 1975, originally named the Charlottesville Transit Service. And it was formed as a division of the City of Charlottesville under Public Works. The contracting work from Albemarle County began in 78. And then in 85, the city assumed the pupil transportation, as well as providing transit services. And then finally in 2010, there was a rebranding to what we now know as CAT, which is the Charlottesville Area Transit. So just a little bit of overview of CAT service. They provide service, fixed route service within the city of Charlottesville to Albemarle County and also to the UVA grounds. The table you're looking at is just 2021 operating characteristics for CAT. And so we see that it operates within an approximately 38 square mile area with a service area population of about 90,000. In 2021, they completed about 600,000 unlinked trips, 730,000 revenue vehicle miles, which was about 74,000 vehicle revenue hours, and did all of this with an operating budget of about $9 million. So CAT's org structure, like I mentioned before, is it functions as a division of the City of Charlottesville. And so all of CAT employees are city employees, City of Charlottesville employees. As you can see from the org chart here, the transit director reports directly to the city's deputy city manager, who in turn reports to the city manager. The CAT as an agency, the city rather operates, it operates as a council and city manager form of governance. And so the transit director is appointed by the city council, and the city council members are voted or elected by the people, the voters in the jurisdiction. So there's 5 council members. They serve the 4-year terms, and they select the mayor and the vice mayor. The reason this is important is because we're talking about CAT governance, and as a branch of the city, inherently the answer up that goes to the city council, and so they are accountable to the city. So in terms of financial accountability or any other kind, CAT's operations are reported through their annual financial reports, financial audits that are performed by the city. And so all of CAT's information is in the city reports. CAT's funding is a mix of federal, state, local, and some directly generated funds, such as advertising money from the pupil contracting. And even pre-COVID, there was some flat fee paid by the university for services. That was pre-COVID. And so that's just an overview of the operating characteristics, the governance structure for CAT. Now, looking at JAUNT, JAUNT is described as a public service corporation. And so it was formed in the 80s, in 82 by the city, Albemarle County, and Nelson County. However, the stock is owned by 5 localities. And so as a public service corporation, there's about 100 shares, and currently the stock is owned by the Albemarle County, the City of Charlottesville, Fluvanna, Louisa, and Nelson County. And as you can see, the share is 5 for the first 2, and then 2 each for the other 3 counties. So now just looking at some operating characteristics, JAUNT provides service. It provides 3 different types of service. They have their demand response service. They have the paratransit service that they provide for CAT, and then there's the commuter bus service as well. And they operate in the service area. It covers a larger area, about 2,000 square miles, because it covers parts of Albemarle, Buckingham, Fluvanna, Green, Louisa, Nelson, and the city through the paratransit service. And it has a similar operating budget, about $9 million for 2021, and a capital budget of about $900,000 as reported in 2021. As well, all the numbers were from the NTD, National Transit Database. And so looking at JAUNT's organizational structure / the governance structure.
Stephanie, we have some questions.
Yeah, can we pause just for a couple questions?
Sorry. Sorry. We don't report to the National Transit Database, so and I haven't done my homework yet to fill in these blanks. So the 2021 data, is that fiscal year 2020? Is that calendar year? Fiscal 21, okay. Got it. And just to clarify, we did, UTS does still provide some fat dollars, flat amount of money, but not as much because of the fare-free conditions. So that still does continue in number 3. on the slide with the timeline, I just don't know if it rises to the, that level of being on the timeline, but in 2008 is when the reciprocal ridership program between UTS and CAT was created. So I, just offer that out.
2008,
Yeah.
Okay.
It was piloted in, I believe, 08 and then adopted, which is a significant thing because that said UTS could be the public provider. CAT was able to reallocate resources that were running on Arlington Boulevard, Rugby Road.
Right.
Those resources got redistributed. So, I mean, I think it is pretty significant that that happened in 2008. Thank you.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Okay, so looking a little bit more at John's structure, John's is set up a bit differently than CAT, which is a division of the city. John's reports to a board of directors, and so they have a board that currently has 12 members. The board of directors is each stockholder. So the 5 localities mentioned earlier, they nominate the board of directors, and the nominations are based on how many stocks or shares they have. In the case of the city of Charlottesville and Albemarle County, the number of votes they have is not votes, sorry, the nominations is rounded down. So instead of 5, they have 4. So they have 4 each from the city and Albemarle, and then 2 each from Fluvanna, Louisa, and Nelson. There are also 3 non-voting ex officio, you can say, directors on the board, which includes Buckingham, TJPDC, and DRPT representatives. So this board, like I mentioned, is nominated and voted in, elected by the stockholders. They serve 3-year terms. They have their monthly meetings, and from among the board members, they elect the president of the board, a vice president, secretary, and treasurer. So these are the officers of the board, and they serve for 2-year terms. And the board also select directors to serve on the various committees. So John has the executive committee, which is made up of the president, the officers, right? In addition to the immediate past president, and then the executive director or the CEO. The last 2 are non-voting members of the executive committee. Then with the finance committee, they have the treasurer and 2 other board directors that are appointed to the board. So this gives you a little bit of an idea of John's structure in terms of the accountability. From the finance committee and the executive committee, and the board, everything is accountable to the board. And so when it comes to the agency bylaws, it lays out some of how many audits are performed, or other items that includes how contracts are conducted, checks, inspections of books, and things related to that are all laid out in the bylaws, even though it's pretty short, but it shows you the structure for JAUNT. And lastly, I'll talk about the UTS, the University Transit Service. So UTS is a completely different kind of transit service. It's not public transit, it's completely under the university. And so all the funding is from the university. It's very staff driven. It's funded through user fees, so that all the students pay a transportation fee, and they also get some funding through charging for parking from the health systems as well. The structure in terms of if there's any like governance structure is the ultimate, they're accountable ultimately to the Board of Regents for the university. And so the director reports up through the associate vice president of operations. Now, organizationally, everything is very staff driven. They make use of the university's resources for things like they share a lot of their resources for procurement, human resources. They rely on the university's facilities management team, et cetera. And so they operate as part of the division for parking and transportation as well. And so UTS, like I think it was, I'm not sure who was speaking, but it's probably Rebecca. They do have the partnership with both CAT and JAUNT, and pre-pandemic, they had that flat fee that it would pay for the service to their grounds. And I think they're in talks of how to reestablish that as well for the future and what that would look like. But in summary, like we can see, the three main services, transit services, are very different in terms of their governance structure and their organizational setup. But we have the private university, the university system, the public service corporation, and the city government. But what we also saw, at least with our discussions, that there is some level of collaboration between the heads of these agencies. And so that was a positive thing that we saw. But in our discussion, even with one of the local town governments, there is a real need or an interest, a very strong interest in providing transit service, whatever kind it may be, demand response, fixed route, microtransit into their localities, for not only connections into downtown Charlottesville or to the university, but even between other localities as well. And so in moving forward in our discussions and how to think about what the transit governance would look like in the region, we'll definitely take into consideration the smaller jurisdictions, the smaller towns that also have that need, although it may be a very small need. And so trying to see what a good compromise would look like for them to be involved in this governance structure, and be able to also receive some transit service, especially with there's a lot of support for the transit vision plan, at least from that local town. So we'll be discussing that as well. So in terms of our next steps is to complete the review of the existing conditions. So we've looked at the organizational, we've looked at the governance structure. We'll be looking a little bit more into the funding as well as the legislative review. Following that, we'll initiate, that's next in the winter in 2023, we'll initiate the peer study, which is phase 2. Before I conclude here, I did want to open this up to discuss your thoughts on, if you had any comments or any questions, but specifically in general to the whole study, but also for the peer study in looking at some of the criteria that we'll be using to select the peer study areas. For now, we are looking at service area demographics, the number of transit agencies in the region, their operating characteristics, whether similar or close to what we currently have, so medium or small, and then their governance structure and their funding mechanisms. If there's any thoughts or particular areas that particular regions you think we should include in the peer study or thoughts, we'd love to hear from you. We're going to use this as the criteria in narrowing down some list of regions or agencies to review and contact for some interviews. But I want to open it up now to any thoughts or questions you have, either for the whole study or for the next phase that we'll be initiating pretty soon. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stephanie. We appreciate it, and we'll open it up for questions. And you might want to take your presentation down so we can see you again. It's kind of nice to, if you don't mind. So, questions, folks? There we go. That's great. Anyone have any questions for Stephanie?
I just want to clarify that we also have funding headed toward John once they send us an invoice for it.
We may not send you an invoice for a while, but if you want us to, we can. But
That's how we pay, we can't pay.
No.
He's saying you don't have to pay.
We don't need the money right now.
Okay.
Except
But,
for-
just given what was presented in the presentation, as that becomes part of our materials, we just want to make sure that it's.
There is a financial,
Yeah,
Sure,
it's,
I
yes, it didn't
understand
just,
yes.
Could you please repeat that? Could you please repeat the comment? Sorry.
the comment is that the University of Virginia does provide, not only funding to CAP, but we are working with John on when they need it to, provide, fixed funding, or some amount of fixed funding, for their services as well. It was interrupted, not ceased, I guess.
Okay, I'm watching the time here, so let's open it up for questions, if you all might have questions. Anybody?
What would you be paying them for, Rebecca?
So just to support, what the reciprocal ridership thing, that was a negotiated thing from many, many years ago, and before the trolley, there was that thing called Big Blue, and people are getting long enough to remember that, and then it kind of worked into the support of the trolley, so that's really the origin of what remains now that fare free. When it comes to the JAUNT, we are supportive of the JAUNT Connect services. We are interested in the work trip, supporting a work trip, so that means fixed route. So Crozet Connect, Buckingham Connect.
We think of the commuter service.
Yeah, similar to, I mean, and we support the Afton Express as well.
Got it.
So those are some of the things.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
All right. Comments or questions from anybody? So Stephanie, the next step will be the peer review, I think, if I remember correctly. But you'll be coming back to us at some point, because I'm very interested in the legislative piece as to once you all review that, what we need to take to the General Assembly. I think will be interesting to know.
Yeah. Yes, so that'll definitely be. So for phase one, we're doing the legislative review, which includes a review of the current legislation that we have, but then once we get to phase four, where we are looking at, where we have an idea of the direction we're going with the governance scenarios and the funding, then we'd be able to tweak or suggest or recommend things that may not be in the existing legislation that we would make.
Okay, that makes sense, so it's separated out. I understand now. Okay. Other comments or questions from anybody? You don't need anything from us, Stephanie, at this point. You like that, I guess. I mean, we're accepting information.
Stephanie, were you asking for feedback tonight, or were you telling them that you were gonna come back to ask for feedback about the peer?
Oh, yes, here. Or if you want to email it later, that's fine. But I wanted it to be an open discussion about thoughts of some of the areas. If people had suggestions on other areas that I think we should study, or what they think about if we should include other measures in our measures in our criteria that we are using, or if we think some may not be valid.
Okay, I see a hand up over here, Ted.
I'm kind of on this kick about whether the authority should be singular mode or multimodal in order for it to be more successful in getting funding or not. So in your peer thing, I don't know if that's a question you can ask, whether the peers are singular or multi, and whether that factored into their ability to get funding or not.
Thank you. Yes, that's something that keeps coming up, whether you should look at dedicated transit funding versus more multimodal funding.
Well, or did they have a road project in there too or something?
Right.
So I think, coming from Richmond and being a part of those conversations, it was the amount of money that was being generated that pushed more into the pot because road projects are fairly, I mean, extremely expensive. But if we're talking about doing road projects here, and our pool in area is smaller, you potentially could use all the money for a road project and transit is zero.
Right.
So there is a little concern on transit side, where we know we need more dedicated funding to continue to enhance our services. And at the pace that we're growing, and it will have to grow to make, all work efficiently for everyone in the region. The general funds from the city and the county are not going to be able to support that.
Right.
So at some point in time, there really does need to be a real heart-to-heart decision about whether we saturate the funds to the point where it's not usable and you're still burdened on the general fund, or really let this pot of money that's potentially going to be generated really take care of public transit, JAUNT, CAT, UTS, to really do the transit system that we said we want.
Do you think, Garland, based on what you're saying, do you think that that might be a criteria for one of your at least to look at an area that has like a similar population or similar geographic
I'm not sure.
footprint?
I'm not sure if they know, I mean, I don't know if who's ready to say that whether they've seen all of, have y'all picked the peer,
No,
agencies already?
No,
no, they're right, they're finding the criteria.
Yeah, that's what part of what they're asking for
Yeah.
as part of this discussion of what criteria should they be using.
There's a tool on the web somewhere that you plug in certain variables. University town, not university town,
Mhm.
it'll give you a list of peers based on data. If I can remember where that is, I think it's.
Is it the N,
I think
I
the
mean,
order
the
of
NPD
the-
has
order
a tool, a similar tool that was developed by the Florida,
Yeah, there you go.
the,
I was
I think it's called the
talking about
INTD out of Florida.
Yes.
Maybe.
I think what they're looking from us, is there any other criteria we want them to consider?
Is there
And
any?
I think we added your comment, to look at.
Yeah, and
transfers.
I appreciate Garland's comments. There's only so much money to go around. And I would like to have all the transit as well. I'm just trying to think politically, what is feasible and how do you make it all work? There's no-
Yes,
So-
and Stephanie, can you reshare the criteria page, please?
To piggyback on what Ted just said, I hear Ted say multiple times about just adding like,
Trails.
trails.
Multimodal, yeah.
To give that multimodal aspect of it. And I think that is a potential way to, include more, maybe a big tent kind of concept. But I think the percentage by which we would dedicate to transit versus kind of the trails and bike paths components need to be kind of upfront, because you don't want to go into the bike path community is going to be a 50-50 split.
Right.
And we're really talking about something more like an 80-20 split, which would really help all parties, but also lift transit and get us to the robust system that the community says they need. And we set that criteria up front. Because I'm also very interested in making sure that the rural communities know if they get into this, that there is money to have them design whatever system they want. And if we saturate that money by putting in large traffic projects improvements, that money's gonna go away and we're never gonna be able to give it back. Because road projects take a lot of money.
Are there goals for the authority? Maybe the goal could be top priority is transit. If there's something left over, other modes or something like that.
There'll never be anything left over.
Well, I don't know. It seems to me we're dismissing an idea before we have to take a look at it.
Well, and I think for this stage, we don't necessarily need to make that
Yeah, we don't
decision in this meeting. I
Well,
think this
that-
stage is what criteria you would use. to
Right,
start
that's
to
all
look
I
at
care
this.
about, then we'll worry about later on.
Part of that trying to get consensus around what the direction is.
So could, in the service area demographics, our university, I think, is mostly considered maybe a mid-sized university as opposed to large. You know, just so you don't get Texas A&M or Ohio State or something like that. So I would offer that, but then maybe expand the description a little bit to have a multi-county distinct rural, urban, mix. So that's what I would add to that.
At University of Iowa might be a good one. It's, Johnson City, I think it is. So, and that's kind of a mix of rural, urban. Iowa State has a mix of urban and rural. It's a pretty substantial system. But that's more of a city system.
Offer some suggestions about, some of, you know, university towns that we have colleagues that then, coordinate with their, like Clemson University and,
They have a
the town of
capital,
Clemson and, places like that.
University of Missouri.
Why, I think Wyoming, is it Wyoming? No, I'm looking at my budget there.
I can't see behind me.
But anyway, pardon?
I'll say Chapel Hill.
UNC is big.
Yeah, but it is, you know, it could serve as a peer because of the way the region works. And they've had, you know, they did try one thing and then said, oopsie, let's try something else. And, you know, that is a good area because of the.
Well, demographically, it's good, but it's functionally, it's mainly a town of Chapel Hill system. There is a regional system, triangle transit, but it doesn't really, it's not really part of the wireless structure, so. But AECOM did a study that in the triangle area.
So I'm not trying to rush this, but I'm keeping my eye on the time, because I'm really your official time.
There you are.
Stephanie, is this helping? I saw you making some notes.
Yes, I could hear, it would be, what would be helpful is if I got a summary of what was said, because I couldn't hear everyone.
Okay, we can do that.
Could we get your email address and we might send you a comment or two directly?
Or you can send it through Lucinda. That's
Okay.
what I do. Then we have a record of it.
That's fine.
That would be helpful. Yeah.
Yes, that would be good to send it through.
Okay. Okay, great.
So under criteria for governance structure and funding, are we only gonna look at places that are governed by public funding? Just thinking of like Amherst, you know, in Massachusetts, where the university, well, you know, the University of Massachusetts system in Amherst, they have an interesting thing, but they might.
That's my system.
Yeah, so you know what I'm talking about. I don't know how to put it into words, but it's
If it's so weird, you can't put it in words.
Pardon?
It's a mixture.
So one time I think the university got
So the university saw a need for transit service in the community, and they started providing transit service for the students and the towns.
Oh, that's a great takeaway back.
Eventually, they turned into a authority, transit authority, and so that the university kind of gave it up. But
Yeah.
they ran the transit service for the whole community for quite a while.
They could have talked to us.
And it's all paid, there's like 5 jurisdictions in the area, and it's all paid for student fees, and it's all free
Wow.
to go.
Well,
any
free to the rider.
Yeah, it's
Is
free.
that which university?
Stephanie's asking where.
The University of Massachusetts in Amherst.
Okay,
How about Ithaca, New York? Does anybody know much about that area?
They have a really good
Yeah.
system.
Because that's the other one. So Ithaca, New York.
It's Cornell.
Cornell?
Cornell, yeah.
Yeah.
Any other comments, thoughts? I'm still watching down here, and I'm not trying to cut Stephanie off. I'm sorry, sweetheart, but we do have.
I was just sweet.
So. If anyone has any thoughts, and please, we hope you do have thoughts, if you'll send them to Lucinda, and then Lucinda can share them with Stephanie.
I wonder if that presentation we had from Blacksburg would be worth for a few months ago.
Yeah, I can do that.
Yeah, certainly Blacksburg is similar.
Yeah.
Well, yes,
Similar.
it's more like CAP.
Mhm.
And the university pays the local share.
Yeah, you're spending the lion's share,
Yes.
the town really can't support it.
Stephanie, thank you very much.
Thank
We
you.
really appreciate it. I really enjoyed seeing the description of the 3 entities. It was kind of a great summary for us and informative. So thank you very, very much. Any other comments or thoughts? I think we'll see you back. Thank you. All right. Our transit provider updates next, and John, Ted, we have you kicking off.
Just real quickly, we've received a draft of our transit development plan, which is a 5-year plan. And I've shared it with some of the local providers, but we'd like to get public input, reaction to the plan. So we're going to make that available on our website next week. The board will get a summary of that, and they'll actually get the plan itself. Also, we're wrapping up our alternative fuel study, recommending battery electric buses for us as a future, and that'll be presented next week at our board meeting as well. And speaking of Texas A&M, it is a study for us, operations efficiencies, and trying to go through that to see if we can be a more efficient operation. So that's it.
Analyze this group, would you all like, would it be interesting to have Ted present their alternative fuel study? I would very much like to see that. Could we put you on the agenda?
Well, Lucas was the chair.
Oh, well, there you go. Lucas.
Yeah.
That, I think that'd be really interesting for this group, after, obviously, first of the year. And I don't know, Ted, if there are any other studies that you talked about, 2 or 3 you were doing there.
Well, we have a transit development plan, which doesn't really get into the needs, but it does talk about service expansion opportunities in some of the rural areas. Like, in fact, Flumet and Nelson are interested in expansion.
Well, that might be an interesting topic for us as well at some point. So a couple of agenda items coming out of that, especially for the rural folks, which think, yeah.
It's a transit development. I sent it to you today.
Yeah, so we'll look at
I'd
those
send
2
you to
items
it.
on our agenda.
Someone check the emails up there.
Yeah, okay, that's great. And then Charmaine, you want to report out on Albemarle County Public Schools?
Yes, we are, can everybody hear me?
That's what we hear.
All right, so we are certainly in the trenches of trying to recruit and working on retention with our employees. The other major thing that has had me really so occupied is that I am presenting and have already presented a strategic plan, transportation plan for Albemarle County Transportation to the superintendent and his cabinet. And I presented 5 approaches. I won't go into a whole lot of details with it yet because I have not gotten final approval. But one of the things I do want to mention in this meeting, especially to the transportation folks in this group, I have submitted a solicitation, a RFP, where we want to outsource a portion of our transportation. And if parts of that looks interesting to either you or your groups can help out, then certainly we've also written this solicitation so that you can share in. We can look at a vendor jointly if you so desire. So that information, we just put it out there today. If you don't see it tonight, I'm not saying you're going out there tonight and look at it, but for sure tomorrow it should be out there. So take a look at it and see if it's something that it looks appealing or that can in some way help you. I know, Garland, you and I had talked about maybe our special needs transport. And so it's going to be an opportunity for us to look at maybe a vendor helping us. Again, the solicitation is written so that you can share in, we can team up and see whether or not we can find some resources to help us. So I've really been in the trenches of that, trying to lay out some sustaining plans for transportation. I'm just a firm believer doing the same thing, expecting a different result. No, we say that's insane. And indeed, in order for us to change this, we got to come at it differently. So that is exactly what I'm trying to do. So that's what we're doing in Albemarle.
Great, thank you.
Can I have a follow-up question?
Yes.
Charmaine, can you either send to Lucinda or someone on the TJPDC staff where that RFP is located so we can share it out widely with our
Yes,
translated?
I'll send you the information. And so,
Thank you so much.
yes.
Great, excellent, Charlie, thank you. All right, Becca, you're next.
I'm very interested in that already. That's my update. No update. That is.
Just to keep inspired.
So you want an RFP, you want an invoice?
Yes.
Meeting wonderful.
Didn't see everything.
All right. So you survived your home game, all your home games, and those are over with now.
Yes, all wrapped up. The academic session did end. I'm sure everyone has noticed on the roads, we'll get as the exam period is over, but so on grounds, you know, of course, we move employees every day, thousands of them. If the hospital clinics are open, our employee services run, but as the academic calendar winds down, we do reduce services during the winter recess. So we're in that mode right now.
Right, okay.
Very operational, so I don't have nearly as interesting studies and RPs going on, but thank you.
All right, Carlin, you're next.
So we are actively working on, and actually Jay was helping my team today, looking at finalizing our I have to get our TSB, which is the Transit Strategic Plan underway. We are probably putting that out, hopefully the next couple of weeks, get a contract on board in January and be done by December the 15th. To make sure we're completed with all of our checks and balances at the city, they're adopted to be on track to have it complete by December 31st of 2023. So that is what we've been putting a lot of effort into. Like Ted, we are at the point where we, Ted and his team have finished their alternative fuel study. We are at the point where we're starting to do our stakeholder portion of our meeting. For us, we have already made the decision to bring on some level of electric vehicles. The question is how many and where can we put them? So that's where all of our energy and focus have been. And it looks like it's probably going to be a small pilot because the range is just not there for a full born yet. As it improves, we will be able to potentially roll that out more and more. Because our vehicles are both like Ted can come back and our vehicles do not have that luxury. We're out there 19 hours a day. And we will have to have almost a 2-for-1 if we go down the road and try to do a full born EV battery model. Our funding can't support that. First and foremost, and there's infrastructure that has been built all over the city to support it on the second way. But we're still moving forward, so we're hoping to finish our study with the takeover piece February, early March, and then we come to.
I was gonna say, we will put you on the agenda.
And have that conversation. We're also gearing up to do, we do a booking, which the driver keep the selector, their runs twice a year. We're doing our booking late March, early April. At that point in time, finally, we'll be adding the center So
There you go, Peter.
that's where we are at this point. So Peter will be seen coming from me probably early January. We need to sign the agreement to allow us to come on your property, get that, so we get that in front of city council. So that is, when you see that, you know that it's coming.
Somehow or another, I feel like we should pop a cork of champagne or something.
It's a long haul, but it's also contingent on, we're anticipating being able to announce that because we're anticipating being able to have more drivers to actually make the model work. And that's the problem, that's been the road the whole time. We've been pulling back service, we want more service.
Yeah.
And that two don't match.
Yeah.
So we've got to be able to get to the point where we get back to a level where we can add our normal services back. And if we keep the pipeline the way it is right now, we're hopeful we'll be able to do that with the next one.
Great, and schools for you?
Schools are the same thing, we're full board, we're working on, we lost our marketing person, we reached out to him and he's gonna help us. And we're gonna do some commercials to actually advertise the fact that we have a $21 starting fee. So we may even need to bump that up since Albemarle went above us.
We're trying to avoid the whack-a-mole. You know that people are trying to figure out how to not do that.
I gotta figure out how to do that. So with that, we're trying to get as many as we can. So a commercial will be, we have a commercial that we made 4 or 5 months ago, 6 months ago. We're editing that and then we're gonna put that out. So we will start our robust marketing to get more drivers. We're pretty much done for this kind of school year. So we'll be adding pieces, but it won't be to the level that we really need. And we're also, gonna be, over the next 5 or 6 months, really aggressively trying to gear up for the next school year. So that's kind of what our goal
And I also want to take this opportunity to thank Garland because he is coming to my hydraulic citizens advisory committee Monday night.
is. So that's my last piece.
Sure is.
So yes, and the last thing I want to say is that we were very fortunate when we asked the state for some additional funding to improve our transit amenities infrastructure. So we have about $300,000 that we can dedicate to shelters and benches. The problem is we don't have the staff. The person that we had left us. So we are trying to bring on a consultant firm. We reached out to AECOM. So there's a concern about the amount of money that's going to be necessary to just handle the process. So we're going to put it out, and they're going to be able to, submit a bid to potentially do this work for us. But we're hopeful that a firm with that level of professionalism can, hopefully AECOM submits an offer for it, and we'll work through that to potentially bring them on board to actually help us move this project along. It's a significant amount of funding, don't let it go to waste. We have to do it right because there's significant things we have to do to make sure we cover all our FTA guidelines. We don't want to get back on the backside for doing it wrong. And get funding taken from us and have to pay back stuff. So that's.
I know how that goes.
You know, I go into that now.
The goal is to have it all worked out so we can move forward in an aggressive fashion. And I know Peter and the folks over at CA have asked us to look at more. We want to do a lot. It's just that we don't have the staff right now to really garner the support and push the project out as fast as we want to.
Okay, all right. I think DRPT would, I think you're there somewhere for DRPT for us.
Yes, I'm here. I
Here you go.
just have 2 quick updates. First is a reminder that DRPT's grant season opened on the 1st and will be closing on February 1st. This includes our special programs, capital and operating grants. Guidelines and applications are available on our website. Secondly, I want to mention that DRPT has an open position for our 5310 project manager. So if you guys know anybody that is looking for jobs in the transportation sector, direct them to the state's hiring website. And then we have a number of studies that are ongoing. We're looking at doing things related to statewide electrification, software procurement and technology, and hopefully, I'll be able to update this group as those continue to progress.
Great, thank you very much. All right, I do not have any other business or, does anybody else have anything they want to put better?
Any, just 2 seconds, does anybody have an update on the north, Albemarle County microtransit?
So we have, in December.
You're talking about the 29 North of Pantops.
Yeah, we have, we're gonna meet with the county.
Yeah, 29 north, yeah.
We're meeting with the county and the staff, so the focus right now is, we know we need to have, we're working on getting out the vehicles. There have been some way that we're hoping to keep it on track. The question is now, who's gonna do it, whether we can self-perform, or we're looking at doing some partnership with JAUNT, or doing a third party provider. We're working with the county to decide what makes sense for them and what can be done the fastest. And
So not before summer.
Well, I was told kind of late spring.
we're aiming for July 1st.
Okay. Then
Summer.
then
That's all, that's the
not-
only update I needed.
Not a day, it's just an update.
Aiming for July 1st.
Okay.
Okay, that's all. And, anything with the unionization, I guess no new updates since what the city did to enable it, or whatever. That
Never
was.
anything.
I didn't hear.
Collective bargaining for Cal.
Collective bargaining. I don't know, I think that's spring, the negotiations start. Or the.
We have a little ways.
They voted on it, you know?
Yeah, because it had to be like,
No.
you had to allow for it.
Yeah,
Vote to allow.
There's a series of time points.
Yeah.
The issue is not yet.
Okay, that's thank you. I need no further update.
Okay.
I'll listen for the shoe to drop and then ask again.
What the mayor said.
Any other updates or reminders for anything? All right, it is 5:06, and I'm going to adjourn us until January 26th, same place, same time.
Happy holidays.
Thank you.
Senator Ryan.